So this is a guitar you may or may not be familiar with, the Taylor T5Z. It's a hybrid guitar made by an acoustic guitar company that leans into the electric tendencies more than anything. It first came onto my radar back in about 2008 when I was working at the local music shop during my university days, and I never really gelled with it. I thought that it was kind of cool, but I also just kind of thought it was a guitar that was having an identity crisis, and because it did so many things, it did them all okay, but it never really did any one thing great. So I never really gave it the time of day other than just playing around with it the odd time at the store. Back then, I thought I was better off to spend the same amount of money I could get this one guitar for to get two pretty good guitars, one electric and one acoustic. Fast forward 14 years to today, and you know what? I haven't even thought about this guitar once. Last week, this guitar came back onto my radar when a friend of mine asked me about it. Without even giving it a second thought, I responded and I just said, you know what, I'm really sorry, I'm not the right person to ask, I'm not into the hybrid thing, I'm more into traditional guitars. I sat with it a little bit longer and I realized how close-minded it was and how close-minded I've been about anything that's not a traditional electric or acoustic guitar for as long as I've been playing guitar. I reached out to my local Long McQuaid to see if they had anything in stock, and they happened to just get this used T5Z. I think it's a custom because it's the Koa top. It's really, really pretty. Anyways, they were kind enough to lend it to me for the week so I could put it through the paces and see what I really think, and so I could make this video. So in this video, I'll run you through the features really quickly, explain how everything works, and then we're going to talk about who this guitar is for and where it excels and also where the limitations are. Everything you just heard in the intro was recorded with this guitar all in one take through my Helix using the looper built into it. There's a link in the description down below where you can grab that preset, but just be mindful that to really get the most out of it, you're going to need an ABY box. The name T5 comes from the fact that A, this is a thin line guitar, so it's full hollow without a center block running up the middle here, and the 5 refers to the fact that there's 5 different pickup selections available here. There's 3 pickups in this guitar here, although you can only see this one here, which looks like a bridge single coil pickup, although it's actually a full humbucker. It's also got a humbucker mounted under the top around here, and a body sensor in the lower bout of the guitar. It's strung with nickel electric strings because it's mostly an electric guitar with one acoustic setting. The nickel strings just work way better with the magnetic pickups, and it's got a fully active EQ where you've got a volume, a bass, and a treble. The controls each have an indent right at 12 o'clock, right dead center, and so that's completely line level or flat, depending on if it's the volume or if it's the tone control. What makes this really, really powerful is the fact that you have the ability to add or cut frequencies, and you also have a volume boost built in right here. Position 1 is the acoustic setting on this guitar. It's the one closest to the neck, and you're hearing both the body sensor and the neck humbucker. It's really great for both fingerstyle and strumming parts. Just the neck humbucker alone. In this position, you can achieve everything from jazz to blues to rock. humbucker. It's nice and bright. It almost kind of sounds like a telly, but you can play around with the EQ and get it to sound a little thicker if you want as well. The last two positions are both the humbuckers together. Position 4, it's in parallel, meaning both pickups hit the preamp at the same time, and position 5, it's in series, meaning they run through each other. So to me, I find position 4, the parallel position, it's a little bit hollower sounding, almost maybe out of phase compared to where we put it into series in position 5. I think it thickens up a little bit in that position. Something particularly unique about this is that if you're running it into the ABY box, you can actually run an acoustic and an electric sound at the same time. Now you can do this by either running into an acoustic amplifier or a line in for a PA and then an electric amplifier, or you can use something like the Line 6 Helix like I've done here, and you can set it up through that. So I brought the EQ up earlier, and that's something that's really worth diving into. So I mentioned it's a passive EQ. You have your volume, you have your bass, and you have your treble. Now the way this differs from a traditional guitar is the fact that you can actually boost or cut frequencies. Speaking of boosts, if you're enjoying the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to hit the like button or comment down below. Those kinds of things really help me out. It lets YouTube know that you're enjoying this video and it spreads it to more people. If you've been hanging out for a while and you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. You can also ring the bell icon. That'll let you know every time I put out a new video so you don't miss anything. If you think about your regular guitar, like a Stratocaster here, the only tone control you have is to actually just turn it down. So the bass and the treble are kind of all together. You're essentially just cutting the high end out of it, and it sort of starts to sound like this. So on this kind of guitar, the tone control is really good if you want to just take a little bit of bite off. Say you're set for your neck pickup, you want to come to your bridge, and it's just a little bit too bright, you can just kind of take a little bit of that off here. Alternatively, you can use that to create like a really thick and creamy effect. I find with the volume, you kind of get the same thing. So now the volume on a traditional guitar, when it's all the way up, that's line level, that's normal, and typically you would just go ahead and set everything full up. Now usually when you start to bring your volume down, you actually start to lose some tone, and it stops driving the amp as much, and again, you can't push it any louder. When it comes to the T5, I think utilizing the active volume and tone controls is the key to actually getting good and really usable sounds, and is what I was overlooking in the past. So if you're playing something like a finger picking pattern, I think the EQ curve that works really well for that is something that's a little bit more scooped. Now Taylor guitars already naturally kind of have that scoop to them, but you could accentuate it even more. If you boost the highs a little bit and you also boost the bass a little bit, what you're doing is the highs and the lows are getting raised up, and since there's no mid control, the middle is actually staying where it is. So you're actually creating even more of a scooped EQ like this. So on a finger picking piece, it sounds really nice. That scoop mid is a really pleasant sound to our ears, and if you don't really understand EQ, it's really easy to set your guitar like that and forget it. So if you're playing a solo acoustic thing, or you're just accompanying yourself singing, or a vocalist, that sound is completely fine, but playing in the mix with a full band is a completely different story. That kind of EQ is just going to compete with other things in the band. The low end's going to get in the way of the kick drum and the bass, the high end's going to compete with some piano and cymbals and different things like that, and what we really want out of an acoustic guitar guitar when you're strumming it in the context of a mix is something that's really mid-forward and actually lacking in some of the treble and bass. Now, it's really easy to dial in that sound if you just adjust the tone controls. So again, it's line level or it's center when it's at the detent spot. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to bring those both back a little bit to try and start. Now, what I'm doing there is the opposite of what I did earlier. So by lowering both the treble and the bass, although there's no mid control, I'm allowing the mids to actually poke through a little bit more. Because you're turning down the two tone controls on the guitar, the volume is going to drop, so you might need to adjust the volume accordingly. The same is true when you're using the electric guitar modes on the T5. You really want to use those tone and volume controls to your advantage. I find that if you just leave them completely flat, sometimes it can sound just a little bit too scooped for my liking. Here's what it sounds like naturally in the bridge position, everything completely flat. Again, I want to hear more mid-range out of that, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to dial these back a little bit. The volume up. Something else that's really useful is on the electric settings. If you have the guitar set to line level, you've actually got a boost right here. And if you're running a tube amp or some kind of a simulation, not only is it going to increase your volume, but it's actually going to push the amp a little bit harder, causing it to break up more. If you find it's a little bit too thin or a little bit too thick, you can adjust the treble or bass to your liking. So then, who is this guitar actually for? Well, I know there's lots of Taylor owners out there that are really loyal to the brand and would just love to have a Taylor electric. It is really nice looking, so if you're someone who likes to collect guitars and you want something different, you want something that's a conversation starter, you want something unique from all your other guitars, this is a great option. Another added bonus is you can play this late at night, really quiet, you can plug it in and it still sounds like an acoustic. So if you tend to be the last one up in your house and you like to play guitar when everyone's gone to bed, this might be worth considering. I think if you're into looping, this could also be really handy. You've got a lot of sounds all in one guitar. This is, I think, is all you need to bring with you to your looping gig aside from your pedal board or your looper, whatever it is you're using, and you'd be completely set. I also think this could be completely useful for someone playing in a corporate band where you're having to cover all kinds of different material. Maybe you're playing in some kind of a wedding band where you might be playing at the ceremony, the cocktail hour, and the reception. You might need all kinds of different sounds throughout your night. If you're playing like a top 40 kind of gig and you need to be playing some acoustic and some electric, you need to have some humbucking sounds and some single coil sounds, I think this could probably do the job for you without actually ever having to switch guitars as well. So although I'm not going to be running out to pick one of these up anytime soon, I'm really glad I got to sit down with it, and I'm really happy to say it's actually a way more useful tool than I thought. Now, if you're one of those people out there that's got all kinds of guitars, or maybe you aspire to have a lot of guitars, there's a video I think you should check out. I made a guitar a couple of months ago called How Many Guitars Do I Need?, where I really went through and I thought about everything I do musically, and I actually came up with a number of perfect guitars for me. You can go check it out at the link right here. As always, guys, thank you so much for your time and attention in such a noisy world, and until next time, I hope you can get out there and make some music. Just remember, sometimes less is more.